Now, currencies are priced differently than most other asset classes, so you may be used to things being priced out to 2 decimal places. So for example, in dollars and cents. But in the currency market, it doesn't just take it out another decimal place, or another one after that. So this is our 10,000th of a place it actually goes out to, 5 places. So we're out to 100,000th of a place. Now these have a name. So for example, the 4th one here, the 4th decimal place, this is a pip. And what it basically means is that used to be the minimum amount that a currency exchange rate, in this case, the euro to the dollar, the minimum amount that it could actually change in value was 1 pip, or 100th of a penny. Now these days that has been taken out to a 5th decimal place, which is sometimes called a pipette, but I rarely hear investors call it that, and that it's actually referred to as just a 10th of a pip. So the pricing like this, what this means is that the forex market in percentage terms actually winds up moving very little, so going out all the way to the 5th decimal place. However, traders are able to capture very small percentage moves and turn those into profits, or of course, risk. So we're going to be working in that in a lot more detail here as we go through this section. Now, although the euro to the dollar is priced in 5 decimal places, there are a few exceptions, and we're going to go over those here in a minute. But first, let's talk about how a pip actually represents value. So in this case, I have the euro priced out to 5 decimal places, but I've got it just at $1.25 even. Now the euro in this equation here is called the base currency. You don't need to remember that, it's just the first one that's in our little division problem here, if you will. The second currency is the quote in this case. That's the dollar. If you think about it, that should make sense, because the exchange rate is being quoted in dollar terms. So when we talk about the euro, what we're talking about is how many dollars does it take to buy a euro. So the base versus the quote. Now this is going to make a bit more sense here later, because we're going to cover this in great detail. But essentially what is happening here is when a trader is trading a full currency lot, they're trading 100,000 units of the base currency. So in this case, that means that we're trading 100,000 euros. If an investor were making a trade either buying or selling a full lot of this particular currency pair, now this is not always the way that it's going to work. Of course, you don't have to take trades that are that big, so we're going to go over that in a lot more detail later. But what happens if you did take a trade like this? Let's say that you thought that the euro or the dollar was going to appreciate in value versus the other currency. So you make a trade in favor of your forecast and it winds up changing by the value of 1 pip. So here, I've got to change it to 1.2501. So what is that 1 pip actually worth? Now here's where we're going to do some calculations. Most of the time, this is going to be pretty easy. Let's multiply it out. So in our former example, we had the euro, which was 100,000 units of the euro. So if we change this just a little bit, what was previously worth $125,000, well, if the exchange rate changes just a little bit, we can multiply that out. We find that this one lot of this particular currency pair is now worth $125,010. So what that's telling us is the value of 1 pip in this case is worth $10. Now this will change a little bit from one currency pair to the other, and how it changes sometimes requires a little bit of math. But fortunately, the trading platforms, charts and so forth, they'll do it for you. It's just important to understand where those numbers actually come from before we go too much further into trading strategies and so forth. So just remember that 1 pip's worth of value, in this case, equals $10. Now in general, if the dollar is the quote currency of a particular currency pair, that's always going to be true. 1 pip is worth $10. Now, what if your account is valued in other currencies? What if you have an account where your own currency that your own account is denominated in is in euro or something like that? Well, then the pip value is going to be a little bit different for you, and we'll talk about how to calculate that. But for the sake of convenience right now, we're going to stick with a dollar-denominated account just to make things a little bit easier. But it's not that difficult to switch it around.